The Indian drug regulator, the Central Drugs Control Standards Organization, has declared that 53 drugs of common use are not of standard quality after these drugs failed quality tests. In fact, the list includes many household drugs, like I said, like Paracetamol Pan-D, calcium supplement Shelcal, and even paracetamol. There are other calcium and vitamin D3 supplements, anti-diabetes and anti-blood pressure medications as well, which are part of that list. And these medicines are manufactured by Hetero Drugs, Alchem Laboratories, Hindustan Antibiotics Limited, amongst many other well-known companies. Now, surprisingly, the 5 pharma companies that are featured in the second list that the government has issued, they have denied taking responsibility for these drugs and has labeled them spurious. The companies have claimed, and I quote, "The actual manufacturer, as per the label claim, has informed that the impugned batch of the product has not been manufactured by them and that it is a spurious drug. The product is purported to be spurious, however, the same is subjected to the outcome of investigation." So the question is, how are these spurious drugs entering the market and why are these companies shirking responsibility? To discuss these and more points, I'm now joined by Dr. Pratit Samdani, who's an internal physician and intensivist. Thank you very much, Doctor, for joining us on ET Now. Give us a sense, first of all, about how serious could the health implications of consuming these drugs could be, because these are from very popular companies and now these have failed the tests. And you know, medicines failing is a serious matter.
Sumita, that's a very valid point. It is a serious issue. Most of these drugs that you've just ran through are actually household drugs, and some of them are life-saving, and most of them are over-the-counter drugs, or what we call as the OTC drugs. I mean, they are in an emergency kit when you travel. They are in the medical box at home. They are a part of the medical airline crew kit for medicines. So they are really true drugs that are required and are used probably daily for everyone. What the government has found out is something serious. I think spurious drugs, vis-a-vis drugs which don't have efficacy or are adulterated, is a serious issue. They can not only be hazardous to health, but they can also be ineffective. For example, if you're taking something to strengthen your bones, you label that a calcium product was not great. It could be of no benefit. If we were taking an antacid, which would have something worse than just giving you antacid benefits, that could be serious. So, and some of the companies that you've labeled, you say that they have shirked away and unwilling to come ahead. I think they need to be really scrutinized onto this. What's also more important is to make sure that these are not spurious. And when I say spurious, Sumita, by definition of spurious means products that are probably deliberately or fraudulently mislabeled, manufactured to mislead and misinterpret the patients by concealing their identity.
So doctor, let me ask you, is the regulator not checking on regular intervals on how these drugs are being allowed into our markets?
So the regulator is supposed to be checking every single manufacturing unit, including random tests. Now, I would fathom to say that probably what's happening, the bigger and the larger manufacturing units are certainly being looked into, checked into. But I would imagine that there may be smaller, diffuse, distressful units that are manufacturing spuriously. And when I say spuriously, they're probably having a local manufacturing, something like home or a small outlet or a factory, and probably giving them long labels. So the labels could be of an A or a Y or a Z pharmaceutical company or a manufacturing reputed company, but actually being manufactured.
So you're basically hinting at quality control measures not being in place at these manufacturing facilities. I want to understand from you, Doc, what's really the process followed for ascertaining the quality of these drugs, especially considering that these are commonly used drugs? Are there any checks, A, on the manufacturing process? I want you to touch upon that once again. Are there any temperature controls? Are there any checks on where these drugs are sourced from, and who really takes a look at all of these processes?
So you've got a very scientifically valid point. Yes, if you go through the site of the the Center for Manufacturing and Pharmaceutical Drugs, you'd be amazed by the number of requirements that are actually required to be diligently cleared. It requires right from manufacturing, production, a certified outlet, cold chain, storage, and dispersion, including all of them. Now, there could be types of impurities, especially if checks are not kept. There could be organic impurities, there could be inorganic impurities, and of course, there could be what we call as residual solvents that can cause impurities and harmful drugs. So the regulators are supposed to check. I'm pretty sure that they're doing a check, but they are not able to tap every single outlet. Many of them could be just unregistered, could be sporadic. But checks are carried out not only for manufacturing, not only what we call as the activated pharmaceutical ingredient or the API, not only for the impurities, which could be in stabilizing matters, intermediate byproducts, ligands, metal consumptions, but there is a slip between the cup and the lip.
Yeah, yeah. So let me ask you, Doc, while India has spoken on various occasions on the need to have quality standards, given that it is looking at becoming an exports powerhouse, we've also seen the Prime Minister talk about it, the Union Commerce Minister talk about it. But does India follow some sort of global manufacturing, practices when it comes to, drugs, for instance?
You'll be amazed to really know that most of the over-the-counter drugs, vis-a-vis even labeled drugs in the United States or in the West, are actually sent from India. So India follows stringent quality control, follows stringent processes, which are not only, eyed upon by the Indian regulators, but also from countries from where they're exported to. But this is unfortunate to know that such simple, common, and daily usage drugs are actually not following the quality control.
Okay, and which is what some of these companies say. They have shirked responsibility, stating that some of these drugs were not really manufactured at their facilities, which basically hints to another question, which is about whether it's only just a few samples or the overall batch that was adulterated. But Doc, is a class action lawsuit possible? How can one hold these companies responsible?
If they are found guilty, I think there should be stringent action against these companies so as to, as much as stop manufacturing such products or the APIs that they use for such products. They should be certainly enhanced and probably convicted if you do something like this, so that this doesn't flow into the mass population. I think it's imperative that the regulators take some action if found guilty.
Okay, and is there any way, there is no way to know, if a drug is safe or not, but how can, users ascertain that? Could you give us some pointers on that?
So
of course, there is a drug control organization in place, but how do users ensure that they are safe while consuming these drugs?
Sumita, as you did ask me, are there checks? Yes, there are random checks even at chemists, as much as not only the manufacturing, but even at dispersion that these people do, including batch numbers. So much so that in hospitals, if we get a reaction to a patient, and it's probably because of the patient and not because of the drug or the ingredients of the drug or the impurity, the labels of the hospital drugs, whether it's an injection, is actually reported. And then the government actually takes into control or seizes or fires or sees if there are any drug reactions to other patients across the world or in India. But it's impossible to realize where it is from. The only one thing that I could say is, this is probably going paradoxically to what you said. Some of these companies are reputed, buy medicines from companies that are reputed. And it's really important for the consumer to know that there are actually 3 or 4 manufacturing units or manufacturing factories for several drugs, but there are several distributors of pharmaceutical companies that source those drugs. So look at the manufacturing unit, not only the marketing company.
Okay, so look at the manufacturing unit is what you're stating, and so you're putting the onus on consumers themselves, but we do hope that government steps into this and of course cracks down on these manufacturing units. On that note, thank you very much, Doc, for joining us tonight and discussing this very important story.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.